Good evening,
Little
everyone. How's
technical
everybody doing tonight?
difficulty here. Hold on.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Oh,
I think it worked. There we go. All right. Anyway, go back to
awesome.
Lee.
Three,
There
two,
we are.
one, go.
Hey, everybody. How you guys doing tonight? What's your week been like?
Awesome. Awesome.
Very
Awesome
busy.
week.
Today I literally had maybe an hour of non-meeting time that I was able to work. So,
Wow,
Oh yeah. The struggle's real.
it's one of those weeks.
that's a tough day. Tough
Yeah.
week when you don't have a whole lot of time to actually do your real job. You're sitting in meetings talking about things that you'd like to do someday.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Planning.
luckily these meetings were for the development conference that I'm the MC of.
Oh,
So,
okay.
I'm like I have to be involved in every meeting having to do with the conference apparently because I might be introducing someone that's now in the meeting. I might be doing this and like
Yeah.
so most of the time I'm just sitting there developing on the side, but you know,
Right.
so good
Multitasking.
things.
I
Good
I
things.
have the inverse problem. So I'm actually getting to do a lot of coding. I'm actually getting to do a lot of work. But my days, last couple days, have started out like a little operational, a little, what's wrong, fix the things,
Hmm.
put out fires. But that usually gets done pretty quickly. And then I've been coding. But I say it's an opposite problem because I'm not just like working on the projects that we thought I would be working on. A rather large, big, super important emergency project popped up. So like instead of like the usual planning and stuff you'd like to do, it's like, oh my gosh, this has to happen, surprise! And in just a few short weeks, I have to get it from zero to complete. So different level of stress there. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's happening though. It's moving.
That might be good to talk about one week. How to handle. We've kind of handled the saying no situation, but sometimes we mentioned in that show that there's times you can't say no. You have to switch your train of thought and
Yeah.
move. There might be good topic to discuss.
So
What's the
instead of a
best ways
hard
to
no, instead of a difficult no, it's a difficult yes. Like
yeah.
because this is like a super I don't, super vital important project or whatever that the whole department's affected by, and we're like, how are we gonna make this happen, right? Like,
Yeah.
this is a fact of life. We got to figure it out, right? So yeah, that would be a good talk. Let's do that.
I
Throw
agree.
that in there.
I would like that topic. That would be good.
So
So
definitely.
tonight we're going to jump into talking about how to build a good resume, and we have Anthony here as our database engineer, and O'Grady as our software engineer, and of course myself as database administrator. So a common struggle is the resume. How do you make one? What should it look like? What should be in it? What should you exclude, if anything? And
That's a big point. I'm glad you're going to cover that as well. What to
yeah, we are
exclude.
going to talk about things. We are going to talk about that for sure, because you don't want to dump everything on there. We're going to talk about some things to exclude and why you might want to leave them off the resume. So at the end, well, at some point, doesn't have to be at the end. I'm going to dump some links that I use to do some of this research from. But tonight, primarily, I think we're going to talk about resume format, so the structure, and not so much the words that go into it. What's the content? What things do I put on the page? We're going to talk about like sections of information that should appear there and a little bit about what goes into those sections, but it's more about formatting tonight. And next week, I think we might show my resume as part of a discussion about content, and we can talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Mhm.
And so let's get started, I guess. Get your new notes. So resume format. just a generic question to get us going, and I'll pick someone so we're not walking on each other. Grady, just what are your thoughts about what sections should you include in a resume? If you're going to start with a blank page, what are you going to put on there to help yourself build a resume?
So for me, I would go generic template first. You have your work experience, your basic little summary up top about you. Underneath each where you've worked, I usually put a little blurb about very targeted things for that. And I'm sure you're going to talk about how to build a resume to be targeted. And then, I don't personally use references on a resume. I know some people put them included. I usually have a resumes, if requested, I have a little thing at the bottom, resumes available upon request. Or, not resumes,
References.
references.
Yeah.
Words. It's been a week. But yeah, I mean, that's I've never been a fancy resume person. I don't think my resumes have ever been really the reason I've gotten a job.
Okay.
So, and I wish I was better at it. So I'm actually interested in a lot of this as well.
Okay. So you're talking professional history, your work history, some kind of summary about yourself, and then a section for references. Did I get that right?
The references, I know some people do. I don't
Okay.
personally. I put references available upon request.
Okay. So, Anthony, do you have anything to add or comment on that? Is there something else you would do with a blank page in terms of formatting or sections or whatever?
Very similar, although blank page is terrifying. I'm always
Right.
starting with a template because I can stare at a blank page forever. But yeah, I tend to have the personal information at the top, kind of the introductory. I tend to like to have bullet points myself because I always assume that it's going to go through a recruiter or HR person first. So I want to get those bullet points and to O'Grady's point, targeted, right? What is the core things they're looking at? I want those in the bullet points. So I'll have some bullet points. I won't necessarily have like Office, Microsoft Office, stuff like that. The for the job that I'm going for, right? So I have those, and then there's the history of my working history, and I remember at one point in time those were short, but now it's much longer, right?
Right.
So I worked here. Here's the stuff I did. Here's the problems I solved. I worked before that. I worked here, so on and so forth. And if it's warranted, the various roles I've had in those organizations. I also do what O'Grady does. I've for quite some time. Um, References if you ask for it, and no one. I haven't anyone asked for it in a very very long time. So
Yeah.
I've had
Yeah.
them after the fact. Like once you get in and you're pretty much have your job interview and all that lined up. I've had personal reference requests or professional reference requests after that, but I'm like,
Yeah. And
I
a
don't
lot
think
of
that
those
was
are automated.
Yep. I don't. I think theirs was a. They got emailed a link or something like that. I think it was a survey.
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah.
did one for you.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I know at least you did. I sent them
Yeah.
out
I
to a
got a link.
handful. Hmm?
Yeah, it took me out to a link and asked me some questions, and um, it
long
didn't take
as it
very
wasn't a
long.
phishing attempt.
Right.
That's the whole joke behind all of it. I go and start a
Yeah.
new company or get to a new company, all just to get Lee in a phishing attempt.
Yeah.
That's a pretty elaborate scheme. You must think I have some valuable information or something.
No, just to
Is
say
it
we
every
need you to get
DBA?
better at clicking on emails.
Oh,
Like
okay.
that's it.
So interesting. There were a few things that neither of you said, and we'll talk about we'll get into them later. But there was no mention of education,
Oh yeah.
no mention of training, and we'll talk about why that's separate. No mention of certificates that you've earned or certifications. So interesting. Okay.
I do
So
put school on there. I just didn't
Okay.
think
I would have
about it.
put, and I would have put certificates. So yeah, but yeah, cool.
Okay. In the spur of the moment, maybe it's kind of hard to think about. Oh,
I
what
mean, to
actually is
be
on my resume?
fair,
I don't know.
yeah,
A
off the
lot
top of
has
my
changed
head,
since my last resume.
yeah, I'm just saying the things that I would find most important on a resume. So,
Right.
I mean, I don't honestly care about schooling as much as some people do when they're looking at resumes, but
Sure. Sure.
Can I can we respond? Can I respond to Spirit Guide, or is that something that we're going to cover? Or you want to wait on that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Or
You can
our 2-page resume still taboo?
I don't think
um,
so, in my opinion.
I'm going to give you a hard no, and we're
Yeah,
actually
me
going to
too.
talk about that Spirit Guide.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think they
Okay.
are for an
So
entry level job.
spoiler: we're all saying no, but go. Depends on the role, of course, probably.
Yeah.
But
I think
no,
entry level
it's no.
jobs that you're not giving you're fluffing your resume just to have something on it, then yeah, don't make it 2 pages. But if you have 2 pages of relevant stuff, I'll gladly look through pages when hiring 2 pages when hiring someone if I'm looking for the
So,
right person, you know?
yeah.
Yeah, I got a
Yeah.
lot of thoughts on that, but we'll get to that when we get to
Yeah,
that.
that's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, for sure. Sorry,
Uh,
Lee.
that's okay. No, it's perfectly fine. So, spoiler alert, everyone. My resume is 3 pages long.
It is.
Yes. My
I
resume
gotta
is
watch the
three
screen too.
pages. I work to keep it to 3 pages. And this is part of what we could talk about maybe next week once we put it on the screen is, okay, how could I condense it to 2? Would it make sense? Et cetera, et cetera. So in terms of resume format, name and contact information, professional summary, uh, you know, what am I about? Who am I?
Mhm.
I'm O'Grady, software engineer deluxe. I can do all the things. That's your professional summary.
That is what it says, actually.
Employment history, education, professional training, certifications. I have other could be the references section that O'Grady mentioned. There could even be other things, but those are the basic things that I would at least consider. Well, you should have all of those things, in
Mhm.
my opinion, especially if you have professional training, if you have certifications, then they should be there.
Yep.
Please don't make stuff up. So before we get to this, I'm just gonna say what should be obvious, but always isn't. Never, ever, ever, ever lie on your resume or your application.
110%.
Agreed. Yeah.
If it shows up on your resume or your LinkedIn or your application, there is a chance that someone in the interview process is going to ask you a question about it. So if you list a skill, it needs to be real.
Yeah.
So just putting that out there. Never
I need to
lie.
remove. I need to remove underwater basket weaving from my LinkedIn. Go on, guys.
I need to add it to mine.
Nice. So provide some headers or sections to your resume so people can easily find what they're looking for. If someone has a pile of 100 resumes and they're all 2 or 3 pages long, they need some headers. They need something so that they can find, okay, what's this person's education? How many
Mhm.
jobs have they had? That sort of thing pretty quickly. Do they have certifications? If you just throw it all on there and there's no formatting, it's just a big page of letters, it's going in the trash
Yep.
or being deleted from the person's inbox. So
I
you
agree
need
with
some
that
kind
as
of
well.
format. Name and contact information. So we're going to start from the top and work down what's on the page. So name and contact information. It seems kind of obvious, but I have a sort of, not really a trick question, but a thoughtful question. What goes in the name and contact information? What do you guys
Your
think?
name, email, phone number, address, social
I
security, mother's maiden
yeah.
name. Wait, hold on.
So
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we shouldn't put the whole address on there though. Like, I'm more of a city state person, not a I live on
Okay.
123 Main Street, because how is that relevant on a resume? But
I also put like GitHubs, um, or LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a
Yeah,
huge one for
yeah.
me when looking through resumes because if I see a 3-pager, a lot of times I'll like look through and be like, this looks like a 3-page that's not fluff, and I see a LinkedIn, I'm probably gonna go to that just to verify
I
some of the
always,
stuff I'm looking at.
spoiler alert, if you're trying to get on at the same company as me, I always look at the LinkedIn. That's what it's there for.
Mhm.
So
Right.
I hear that people do the like social media scan. I don't do that. But I definitely do the LinkedIn because that's what it's there for, and
Well, yeah.
you can find a lot of information about where they've worked and everything like that they've purposely put out. So
So, yeah, this is something that we could talk about at some point. Maybe, I mean, we could do it here, but I wasn't planning on it. What's what should be or what is the relationship between your resume and your LinkedIn account? And what should be that relationship? What does it look like? I'm sensing, O'Grady, that you going to LinkedIn because you specifically mentioned that 3-page resume.
Mhm.
I sense you're going to LinkedIn to get a quick look so you don't have to maybe read the 3 pages or to
It's not so
decide if
much.
you're going to read the 3 pages.
It's kind of to verify that the 3 pages is not just fluff. So like you said, don't lie on your resume. We know that. But if it's on your resume and your LinkedIn, I'm a lot more likely to believe that those sets of skills are something that are real. And
Okay.
usually, like it's something like yours, where you have a 3-page resume. It's full of stuff that's just relevant, and that's not as common all the time when going into a job. So you're like, is this real? Check their LinkedIn, and it's full of different businesses they've worked at, or people that comment and say, well, what did they
Endorsements,
commendations or
recommendations.
endorsements? Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, okay, it checks out. That's my full
Right.
social media check that I do. So
Right.
I don't care if you go
So,
drinking on your Facebook. That's not going to bother me. But if
yeah.
you have a messed up LinkedIn, sorry.
Yeah, that's a bigger
right, that's what it's
problem.
there for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Anthony, you said something interesting about the address. You said you're not sure that the house and street number are relevant. Can you explain? Can you expand on that?
Oh, I just for some people it might not be ideal that this piece of paper that could end up on the internet everywhere forever and all time have the place for you, your kids, sleep. So yeah, I would recommend. I didn't know this at one point. I know my resume's out there, but now I realize that like a resume from 14 years ago
Mm.
is being used when someone reaches out to me for a job, and I'm like, whoa, no way! Like that still
Yeah.
exists, but it's out there. It's just floating around, and that's
Yeah.
the nature of the internet. That's
Hmm.
me. Like
Okay.
I think it's totally reasonable that an employer wants to know what municipality I live in, like St. Louis area, outside of the St. Louis
Oh
area.
yeah.
That for me, that doesn't bother me any. Like even
Hmm.
differentiate between the two. Oh, you live out more in the country. That matters because we're on prem place. Oh, we're not, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Or
Okay.
yeah,
that's
you
that's
live
my thought.
100 miles from the closest office and you only do on prem, then yeah, you want to definitely
That
know
could
that.
be it could be
Yeah.
relevant, right?
Mhm.
Right. Right. So it
But
sounds
yeah.
like you were leaning, Anthony, more towards like it's a safety thing. Like you don't want people to show up at your house.
Yeah,
Uh,
not because it usually happens, but because
it
stuff
could.
happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dunn says it
And
right. He
then
just moves every 2 years to avoid anybody finding him.
That's a
that's a
strategy.
It's
lot
the
of
way to
work.
do it.
It's a lot of work, Nuns. Um, yeah. So those are good points. What about? And I haven't hit on why. So what about the zip code?
Okay, so I had more of a red flag for 123 Main Street than I did about 633 123 whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have had a problem with zip code, though I guess it does narrow it down. I'm After O'Grady, I'm very curious to hear what your thoughts are. because you're
Mine-
referring to it.
I'll have my full address.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
I don't
mean,
know.
you're also trained to kill, so I mean,
Yeah.
it's their.
I always say my
my
door is
Wow.
locked for the protection of those outside. So
yeah.
So, in doing some of the research, I came across something I hadn't really thought about before and it hadn't been brought up. The zip code, and of course, if you have, 123 Main Street, you actually have your house and street on there, could be used to dig up socioeconomic information about you and or even political information. Like if you're within a certain
gerrymander.
political district or whatever, that sort of thing. I mean, it would be horrible that someone would do that, but in this day and age, I wouldn't put it past someone.
That's like Dunce
Making
brought
a
up
problem with
just a minute ago. Yeah, you can get in trouble for finding out things you shouldn't if you are doing just social media looks too as well. So from the opposite side. But
Yeah.
So I do think based on this, I am going to change my resume, and because I have my complete address on the resume.
Mhm.
So
oh yeah, that's yeah. I'm
I should
looking at
change that probably.
resume examples online right now. I just pulled a couple up so that I'm
Mhm.
not looking too dumb when I'm talking to you. But yeah, their examples all have like New York, USA.
Yeah.
That's where they live in New York. It's like okay,
And that doesn't even have to
Right.
be incredibly accurate. Like, I would not, if O'Grady was applying for a job and I happen to be one look in the resume, if he put down St. Louis, Missouri, but he's,
50
Winsfield, I don't
miles
know if anyone
out.
watching
Yeah.
this, if anyone watching this knows what Winsfield is, or Troy, I wouldn't second guess when I find that out. I wouldn't be like, oh, you lied. I'd be like, well, yeah, that, all of the suburbs of St. Louis, I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, when I leave and go to different states, they say, "Where are you from?" I say, "I'm from St. Louis," because
Yeah, because they don't know anything.
you don't
I
know
do the
anywhere
same
outside
thing.
of St. Louis.
Nobody knows what my hometown is. Like if I say this is my hometown, which I'm not going to do right now, no one knows what that is. But I can name the city and they're like, oh yeah, okay, I know
Yeah.
where that is.
I
Yeah,
feel like
100%.
even like with Dunce and all them, people that I don't obviously share a lot online, but I feel comfortable enough to say St. Louis because there's millions
Yeah,
of people.
it's a big
Like
place.
the area that I'm in is I'm like,
You see
I mean,
Dunce's comment.
might as well say Midwest. It's like,
If you live in Delaware, yeah.
Because it's so tiny, Dunce. I love it. Okay. Suppose that you're looking for a job out of state too. Yes, that's
Yeah.
true. That's true. Yeah. So Spirit saying, or it can also disclose that you're looking for a job out of state, or maybe doing a fully remote position, and those all matter.
Which-
they could matter.
that could be a negative as well for you if you're looking for, let's say you're moving to Spirit, as discussed in chat before, that he moved from Florida to California. And while looking for a job in California, that could hurt you if they see that you have a Florida address or even city,
Yeah.
but you're trying to apply because you're moving. They might be like, oh, he wants a remote job. We're not doing remote jobs. And it's
Yeah,
like, well, that
that's true.
sucks.
Oh, that's unfortunate. We
So
talked to you anyway.
let's see. So we talked about that. Okay, so we mentioned, I think somebody mentioned, did we talk about an email address? I think O'Grady, you mentioned email address for the
I
top
put-
part.
Yeah,
We
email
didn't talk
and
about it, but he mentioned it.
Okay.
I put my email and my like a GitHub, or that's why I mentioned LinkedIn. Yeah.
So this is not a real email address for me, at least. So anyone here or watching this later, this is not real. So what do you think about SoonerFanDeluxe at hotmail.com?
I go.
That brings up a
Is-
good point.
Is that something that should be on my resume?
I don't think
Guilty. I use an email address that's what was created when I was a teenager that I've always had, and I shouldn't. And I keep meaning to make a professional one, but everything's tied to the other one. Like
Yeah.
since
Oh, you can
the
link
dawn
Gmails
time.
now. So if you make a new Gmail, you can just forward everything. But
yeah, that's true.
Okay.
I don't have a
that-
good excuse.
yeah, it's something that wouldn't be like a deal breaker if I saw it on a resume, but it does give you more personal insight than you want at that point, in my opinion. To
Yeah.
me, that says, okay, this guy, I'm assuming guy, I guess that's a bias, but this person has a non-professional email, and then you look at the email, and in this case, not even that terrible, but still unprofessional. Some though are both unprofessional and terrible emails that people
Yeah.
still decide to just throw on there that are
Yep.
not even, I would consider them not safe for work, so therefore don't put them on a resume.
Really?
I don't know if you guys have seen
You've
those.
seen not safe for work emails on resumes?
Yeah, like
That
it's stuff
someone
that
has
could get
no
you in trouble with
awareness.
HR, but not like if you were talking about it at home, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm like,
Yeah. So I think the point here is you should have a professional resume. Usually your name at, Gmail or Hotmail or something, whatever. Lee Markham at something.
Dunn says
Some form of that.
100% correct right there as well. If you can have your name or your first name at your last name.com, that's like the most beautiful looking email in my opinion.
That's true. That's pretty
A
good.
lot of us have lastname.coms that are taken by huge companies, but
Yeah, that seems like a very specific problem there.
I think it is, but it's all right.
Now everyone knows your last name is Microsoft. You just outbid yourself.
That got me.
Yeah. So, it's super easy to set up, another email address and to make something that's professional. So I would just encourage you to do that if you haven't done it. So a thought that I had because of a presentation I actually watched a number of years ago from the SQL Server community is something we shouldn't have to think about, but the reality is we do. So if a resume came across your desk and it said the name was Lee Markham, obviously you all know me, but if you just had the name, what would you assume about that person's gender?
I would assume
Gender is a DBA.
male, even though I have a sister-in-law named Lee.
Yeah, that was probably that
So
was
it's like,
So the reason I bring this up is because during the presentation that was being talked about or made years ago, they were coming at it from the perspective of if you're a woman, a female in IT, that you are at a severe disadvantage already.
oh yeah.
And to get past gatekeeping, you should, if you have if you have one name that's very feminine and one that's neutral, you should list the neutral name early on to get past the whole thing of, oh, this is a woman. I don't, whatever. I'm not even going to say some of the things that people say.
Yeah.
So it's
trying
unfortunate.
not to emote how frustrating it is that we have to talk about that.
I know that's what I was gonna say. It really
Yeah.
sucks that this has to be a thing, but it's cheat
I know it's a
codes.
thing. I know it exists.
real.
I hear people complain
Yeah.
about but
Oh, I
it
just had a
it's-
whole meeting today about
name's Tony, and you have to spell your name
Yeah.
with a Y instead of I on resumes.
whole meeting
Well,
today was
alright.
over how to avoid things like this. It doesn't happen that I know of at my company, at least on my level, but still company wide. Every now and then they're like, "Here, you
Yeah.
need to learn how to, work with equity and equality." But
Yeah, and even me just suggesting what I suggested earlier, some people could be offended by that. So I'm not saying that you should go with a more neutral name. If you want to use your real name, regardless of what it is. I'm not saying make up a name. If you want to use your normal given name that you do every day, maybe it's Mary. I'm just gonna use a name. If that's what you want to use and you don't care that it might indicate gender, great. I'm not telling you don't do that. I'm just saying that unfortunately that could be a barrier
Yep.
in some industries. So I'm just putting it out
Enough
there as part of
so,
talking about your resume.
yeah, enough so that at a technical conference that the DBA this YouTube video was in, they had a whole talk on it. Yeah, and the same thing. We don't have to go completely into it, but same thing. Your name gives away, your race. If you feel that you don't want to use I wouldn't care. Like, let me rephrase. If I saw on the resume it said Henry, and then after the fact, after we met, or even after you're hired, you're like, oh yeah, my name is Henry. My name is insert very foreign name here. I'd be like, well, that sucks that you had to do that, but I wouldn't.
Yeah, I'd be like, I get it. That sucks,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, I definitely wouldn't take offense to it if someone felt they had to do that. I would think that all that indicates is that we need to get better. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
agreed.
if we
Yeah,
put off
someday
that
people
vibe that
shouldn't have to worry about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to keep going down. What about Twitter handle? I don't know if anybody mentioned this, but what about Twitter handle?
No, we
what do we think about
didn't.
including that?
is it a business Twitter or personal Twitter? If you have a business Twitter, a professional Twitter, then I would say include it. If it's a personal, or even if it's a personal / professional, I would not include it. That's my opinion. But
Right.
Yeah, I think it makes sense depending on what you emote, what your persona is on Twitter. Totally,
Exactly,
I
yeah.
totally grok what you're saying, O'Grady. You wouldn't even do your personal one. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want to like,
Yeah.
hey, I stream and it's all
Yeah, I
good and
don't-
gravy, but you're looking for a job. You don't want that to be part of the thought process when they're hiring you. So just leave that
Yeah.
out. That makes sense.
yeah, like
Yeah,
Dunn
so
said, same
any-
with GitHub and any websites that you are throwing up there. If there's true personal websites that you don't mind talking to business colleagues about on a regular, then that's fine. If it's something that could possibly either get you in trouble or that you may at one time, sometime in the future, want to post something on that's not professional, don't put it. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
CYO
So I
it.
have
Yeah.
2 Twitter accounts. One that is strictly business stuff. So I post about SQL Server because that's the business I'm in. That's my role. That's my job.
Mhm.
And then I have a separate personal Twitter account where I feel more free to say things or respond to things.
Or
Over
share
there.
great memes that involve Garon from Star Trek. So
Sure. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Upwards.
And so yeah, just think that through carefully. I really like what both of you are saying. Just be careful. If you're going to put a social media handle on there, you need to be sure that it's what I'll call a clean profile of information. So
As well as relevant, you know.
yes, relevant.
Yeah. If you have
Yeah.
your own personal Twitter, but it still talks nothing about what you do on this job, well, don't put it up. It's not going to help you.
Yep.
Don't post it.
So I don't know if it's going too much in the weeds or not. So I'll try to make it brief, unless you guys want to go under more. I feel like
Brief,
there's some
boxer,
people
whatever,
on
man.
Twitter. There's some uh, there's some people who are political on Twitter who are also
Yep.
very professional. They're professionals, and I kind of think that some of them want it to be used as a deterrent for, if a company has a problem with the fact that I believe these 3 things, then I
Yeah.
hope they don't talk to me, right? We're not advocating that, or I'm not. I'm just saying I kind of feel like some people do, right? They're like, I'm gonna throw this on there so you find out that if you don't like the fact that I love cat pictures, well, I don't need to be working for you.
Yeah.
I like how Dunn said as well. He has some LinkedIn accounts for browsing potential employer pages, because LinkedIn does show you so and so looked at your page or so and so did this. I don't know if I can say to make a fake account for TOS purposes, but I agree.
I would actually say don't. Like,
Oh, I do.
if I'm about to talk to someone in an interview and I find out that they reviewed Hunter's page or reviewed me, they found me and were like looking at my profile, that would not be a red flag. That'd be like they care.
Oh,
We'll say something else. But like that would bother, like that's not so I would almost
Yeah.
argue like it's probably better that if you care enough to do the research that they know. That's a good thing. If the hiring
Yeah.
manager thinks that they're, all they are is attempt number 72 this week, how's that helping you?
yeah. I think you
Yeah,
can look
I'm
at
not
it both ways there.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the motivation to be anonymous looking at someone's profile or an employer's page, but maybe
Mm.
there's something I'm not thinking about. I kind of think like Anthony. If I'm going to view a page, I'm going to look at a potential employer. They're going to see that, which means they also then might turn around and look at my LinkedIn, which could help me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about gender and resumes. What about things that could give away your age? So, for
Your job
example,
history.
okay. Do you have your date of birth on your resume? Do you have the year you graduated high school or college on your resume?
See, this one's interesting. I do
I
not.
don't think I do.
I used to at one point in time, but I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
if I was doing it now.
I don't think I put
Um,
any dates on my education, actually.
Okay,
I just listed what they all were.
right.
yeah, I understand that like ageism is a thing, um, but like if I'm interviewing for, ironically enough, we're interviewing for a software architect. But I'm hiring an architect and they've been around a long time. That's a good thing. I know that I know in some industries and some jobs and some employers, they, might frown on that. I'm just
Mhm.
saying I don't grok that. Like, if you're an architect and you have gray hair, you've been around for a
You've
while,
been at
or you get
least
some
a
rough
year.
jobs.
Yeah.
Right. So, but yeah,
Started in
I get it.
2020.
You say when you graduate, you basically, unless you Doogie Howser,
Yeah.
you're showing your age.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think in our industry in general, age can be looked at as a strength as someone who's been around for a while. I think the opposite side of that is that some people look at age as a resistance to change a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why,
Yeah.
for me, obviously no ages on the resume. You're not allowed to ask ages during hiring process. Um,
Yeah, if they're not allowed to
so
ask, why give it away? I guess might be the
that's
thought.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of my go-to rule is if it's not asked for, I try not to, or if it can't be asked for, I don't want to present
Volunteer.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So this was an interesting one for me. I have always had I don't think I put high school in there, but I've always had the graduation year for college and for my master's degree. And I recently took that off of my resume. So just again, not something you should necessarily have to think about, but I'm just letting you know that maybe you should think about it.
I would
So
say that the caveat on that would be if you have large gaps in your work history, you
mhm,
can use the fact that you have this education at this time to help fill those gaps as one, but two, also to show like maybe a transition in career changes. If you see that
okay,
you finished a bachelor's degree in 2021 and you've been in a field obviously for a while, but
Mhm.
you're switching to IT. That could help also
Sure.
give an understanding of why this is happening. So
Right. Okay.
keep that in mind as well.
I have, so obviously, you don't need to disclose your age at any point in the process. When you get to an application, like an actual app, yeah, you have to put that information. But when you're interviewing and that sort of stuff, they can't legally ask about that. They also can't ask you things like, are you married? Even though I was asked that direct question in an interview, and I actually said, you can't ask that. That's not relevant. It's not a legal question.
I've been asked that as
And they
well.
chuckled and said, "Oh, we're just making conversation." It's like, not with that question.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
Yeah, there's a reason why certain things are protected from being asked, and it's not always
Sure.
just to keep people from feeling uncomfortable. But yeah, they find out you're married. Well, they're paying more in insurance now. They're having to deal with more things, possibility of having you out of work more. There's a reason why you don't want to disclose everything up front.
Exactly.
And normally I tend to be, I've been very privileged where I can say I never see that, I never see this, I never see, in this case I have seen that. I've now my current employer, pull that out there real quick, but somewhere I've worked, I've been on the email chain where they were talking about candidates, and person was saying we should turn on somebody for a role because they were pregnant.
Ooh,
And I'm like,
that goes against
flag on the
I think a
field.
lot of things.
It goes against being a decent person.
That's
Let's
everything.
be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
But now I know what to think about said person who said that out loud.
That's
But
very
yeah,
true.
so this
All
crap
right.
happens.
It does
Sorry.
happen, and it's unfortunately that we have to keep bringing up these areas, these little parts that you have to think about in your resume, even though you really shouldn't. But
Yeah.
it's just hopefully it'll get better. So as you move down, I think O'Grady mentioned GitHub. Maybe Anthony talked about websites or blogs. So if you have a blog, if it's relevant, you should put it. So you have your name and contact information, your email address, maybe a Twitter handle if it's relevant, and then you keep moving down. Maybe you have a blog. Maybe you have a link to GitHub that shows projects that are relevant, and that sort of thing. So then maybe you get to the point of some kind of professional summary. And
I just posted something in admin that Dunn sent me, by the way. We can review that later.
Okay.
It's an AI building resume.
Okay. So for example, here's my professional summary. I just copy pasted it. SQL Server database administrator with experience installing and configuring SQL Server 2005 through 2019, performance tuning, optimization, and monitoring, as well as database design and migrations. I design and support high availability and disaster recovery solutions for SQL Server, as well as perform basic VMware monitoring and administration. I also have 9 years of experience managing direct reports. It's a little long, maybe, but that's my summary. So I think a summary, it needs to succinctly wrap up who you are as a professional and include at least some of the skills that you're familiar with.
I agree. It's I was looking to see if I can find my resume on my LinkedIn. I thought I saved it. I know it's not on this computer, but
And it might be interesting. So I just want to clarify why I have that last sentence of I also have 9 years of experience managing direct reports, because at some point I could envision myself moving into like a database administrator manager, a DBA manager, or running a department of DBAs. And so having that as part of my summary indicates, oh, well, this person has some experience managing other people. already, and it gives them a point to we could talk about that. What experience
Yeah.
do you have? Sort of thing.
So,
Uh,
how do you feel about? I guess this would be more on your LinkedIn side, still resume-ish.
mhm.
Like on my about on my LinkedIn is a. I don't know if you guys have seen my LinkedIn, but it's a satire kind of blurb. It's kind of going over my background in a funny way, and
Okay.
I've gotten comments on from people that have asked for interviews about it in a positive manner. How would you suggest people approach their LinkedIn page to keep it, or their resume in general, to keep it different, I guess, noticeable, without being unprofessional?
So
Big
this
questions.
it is a really good question. I saw some an article take a really hard line against anything not professional. Like if you have hobbies or interests outside of work, those don't go in your resume. I felt like that was pretty straight laced. And I was thinking, particularly in this day and age that has changed because of the pandemic, and we're on Zoom calls or Teams calls or whatever kind of conferencing you use all day with people, and they're being interrupted by their pets or their small children, or maybe they're not so small children or whatever. It's changed, at least for some people. I feel like it's changed how we think about our coworkers.
Mhm.
They're not just a robot that we see at work,
Yeah.
because now we're seeing them at home in their, their native environment, and it's like, oh, you have a kid, he's doing something cute and funny, oh,
It's
look at that
cluttered like my
cat.
mind.
Yeah.
I have a background.
And so I feel like there's a place for hobbies and interests. Like on my LinkedIn for a while, I had an entry for volunteering at a food pantry that's nearby.
Mhm. I think volunteer
And
stuff is good to have on resumes. Is that not suggested still, or standard?
I don't I don't know. I didn't, except for the one article I came across, I didn't see anybody even talking about that.
Hmm.
So we could do some more research at some point, but I would be fine. Like if I saw a resume and it had some kind of volunteer work, I would be impressed with that.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's what.
you
Yeah,
you spend time with Habitat for Humanity, or insert favorite charity here. I would be like, well, that's really cool. Person spending their personal time to help someone else. That's a
Also, if
person
you
I
have
want on my team.
yeah, if you have trouble filling your resume up with a lot of information, you're early in your career, for example.
hmm
I'm sure everyone's heard you're getting in your entry level into IT is really difficult. But once you get there, once you've been there for 3 years, it gets a lot easier.
yeah,
Well, getting in there is hard because you don't have a lot of experience. So volunteering is great for
Hmm.
yes,
that information on the resume. And O'Grady, I love your LinkedIn profile, but you would not do that. I would not recommend doing that to somebody. Doing that on your resume.
yeah. That wouldn't be on a resume. That's what I was wondering. Like, so there is
Yes.
a separation, but you
Yeah.
still want to
I
be
personally, I
noticed.
feel LinkedIn can be a little more loose if you want. But when I say loose, I don't
Still
mean
professional, but not.
yeah, like
Yeah,
yours. Yeah, I think yours. If I was reviewing some position and the resume buttoned up, and then I saw a LinkedIn like that, I would have no problem with that, especially in technology fields.
yeah, yeah. That's
Cool, cool.
okay, sorry. But yeah, no, that's
So
just curious about that. Yeah.
yeah. So I think so. We've got the top part of the resume filled in, and now we will look at professional history. I think you include Here's what I have on mine, and I've seen it pretty regularly. Obviously, company name. I put the address of the company. So company name and the address for each employer, beginning and end dates for those roles. And I think month and year is fine. No one cares that you started on April Fool's Day and ended on Christmas. They just care, it was
Years.
April 2015 to Christmas, December 2017 or whatever it was.
How many years
Uh,
apart until you just put years? Or would you ever suggest that?
Any years apart? Are you
Like if
saying
it's, let's
just
say you work
2017 to
from,
2019?
yeah. How many years apart would that have to be for that to be, like if you work somewhere 20 years, do you really want to put April 2000 to June 2020
Yeah,
or,
I see what
you
you're
know?
saying now.
I mean, it
I
might
mean,
just still be standard practice, but just curious if you
I,
ran into that.
I mean, my feeling is 4 or 5 years. Once you've been there 4 or 5 years, probably just the year is enough.
Because I'm sure you guys have ran into when making a resume being like, what month did I start there? Especially if it's 4 jobs ago, and you're redoing your resume, you might have lost information. You're like, I
Right.
don't know, 2012 sometime. It's,
Yeah. So Jones is making a
yeah.
good observation. Some places want dates. And all I can say is, maybe you have older versions of your resume that have the dates. Because once you get a number of jobs, it's like Grady was talking about, you don't know when you started. You might not even remember the month.
If it's government or security clearance related,
Yeah.
you gotta be as specific as possible. Um,
Sure.
I know more than one person who's had to go through security clearance, whatever background checks in order to get bowling's that far from me. So
Yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose you could call past employers and HR could look up your start date and end date for you. I don't know. I've never had to do that, but maybe. I guess that
I
partly depends
always
on whether you
wonder.
left on good terms or not.
So I've been in the
yeah,
hiring process as far as being the one interviewing, that kind of stuff, but I've never been in the HR side of it. And I've always been curious if they do check all your old companies, if they verify dates or anything on that. Yeah,
you should talk to an HR person sometime.
I think it would be interesting just to know how much they actually go into the background.
Mhm.
Same with colleges. Do they pull your transcripts? Do they even call the colleges to check, or does no one care?
I
Like,
I've always assumed, and this is just an assumption. I've always assumed, just based on like conversation stuff I've had in a lot of the companies I've been at, that they run a background check and make sure things line up.
Mhm.
They don't necessarily try to call up the guy who was your supervisor who doesn't work at that company anymore, right? Because he
True.
left too.
Yeah.
So I always assume that it's more like they do due diligence and make sure things line up. Looking for that like red flag or whatever. But
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't
Right.
work in HR either. So
Yeah. So in terms of professional history, how far back do you go? Is it 5 years? Is it 10? What do you guys think? How far back do you go?
As far back as is relevant in my mind.
100% what I was gonna say. You stole
Yeah.
the words. That it. So if you're entry level, you might need to like go all the way back to the job you had when you're 16, right? But once you've got a little bit of experience, once you can fill up a page or two, it's only what's relevant. No one cares if my first job was Pizza Hut through an interview process. If it comes up
Right.
that's relevant, I'll mention it. But my first job was Pizza Hut. Now the world knows. Uh,
I
Yeah.
will stay. I will say that there's a required. I would say probably 5 years. Um, just so they know you're not hopping around every month, that kind of thing. But I'd say
Yeah.
anything older than that, only list what's relevant. So if you worked at Radio Shack when you were 16 and you're going for an IT job, still might be relevant. Like, I'm assuming
Yeah.
this is a entry level, maybe mid 20s person that was working there when they were 16. It might have been 10 years ago, but if that's where your IT career started,
Sure.
put it on there. Like, I would love to see that at 16 someone was starting working at Radio Shack and they want to now be a developer. I'm like, seems like a straight line you're taking there. Cool.
Yeah, that would definitely be
The hiring
relevant.
managers on the young side, they're like Radio Shack. I think I've heard that.
Oh
That
god.
sounds familiar.
Everybody
Ah,
watching right now, like, hell's Radio Shack?
Yeah, I wondered about that, but
Right next to Values or Circuit City. It's fine.
yeah, Circuit City, good old Circuit City.
When we got right before we got married, my wife's looking at Blockbuster. Can you imagine that on a resume? Like Blockbuster. Is that like
I would
Netflix or
hire
something?
someone just because they worked at Blockbuster. I wouldn't even look at the rest of the resume.
Oh, that's great.
Hired.
Yeah. If you can deal with that, man, you can deal with anything.
So one of the things that we talked about is how long should it be? So we've said, how much experience do you put on there? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Is it however much is relevant? And obviously, the more years of experience you put on there, the longer it makes the resume. So I already told you my resume is 3 pages. I'm not going to let it go past that. I did recently ask someone about it, and they said, "Oh no, that's totally fine. It's relevant experience. 3 pages is fine."
If it's relevant, I agree with that. In fact, at one point in time, I was talking to a recruiter, and when they gave me an example of somebody, we were discussing senior level stuff, and they gave me an example of somebody they thought they had a good resume, right? That they got permission to share out, and it was 5 pages, but it was very relevant. Like this person was a serial contractor and he went, dive
Oh,
bombing
yeah.
to places, did things, and like went to the next place, and so tons and tons of experience. And that person said, "This one is too long, based on like what you see in blogs and stuff, but it's just stellar." And
Mhm.
I've definitely interviewed those people that they worked at a place for 12 years, moved to another place, worked there for 12 years. That's their career. They know a lot of stuff. And other people, maybe they bounce around, so it looks kind of long, but there they learn how to do X, and here they learn how to do Y. And that's why they know their way around SQL Server and Oracle and Cockroach DB. And now they did the NoSQL thing, and now they're bailing on that because they hate the NoSQL thing. Whatever. Telling a story.
Right.
Yeah, they do say the average time in IT is like 5 to 7 years per job. Bouncing around nowadays doesn't look like it did 20 years ago,
No.
So
Yeah.
I
In
agree.
IT, especially. In IT.
especially in IT, yeah.
I think it's actually probably going to get worse just because of the nature of things. Last couple of years, it's
Yeah.
a seller's market, I guess is how I should say it. People can just pass away to get a raise was to leave the company, and it's even more so true now.
If you want to get into IT, now is, I think, the best time to do it. Because if you want to get in IT, here's exactly how. Go to a company that can't that's looking to hire non-remote workers, in-house workers to do development or whatever part of IT you want, and you will get a job.
That's
Like,
true.
It's be willing to work and have a resume that says you're interested in IT and has some kind of background, and listen to obviously how Lee is telling us to build these resumes. And companies are looking so hard for people that will work in a office.
Yeah.
And a lot of those companies are teetering on full work remote. They just aren't quite there.
It's
So
true.
if you get in while they're doing office stuff, well, chances are you're going to be working remote anyway. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, I like that. I really do. So we're kind of moving down toward the bottom of the page. We have name and locale information that's iffy about what parts of locale. We've talked about that. And we've talked about professional history. So down further after that would be educational history. So maybe, depending on how old you are, high school date is, or high school still relevant, just to show that you graduated.
Especially if you
Or-
don't have much post education.
Yeah, especially that.
Yeah. I think it depends on where you are. Entry level, I mean, I guess it makes sense. But like if you're getting hired for a senior level IT position, at that point, if your resume looks good and you nail
Yeah.
the interview, it'll be a funny antidote to say, "Oh yeah, I dropped out at 14." Like at that point, no one cares anymore,
Yeah.
right?
Like
Like
I
you're
have
that
3
guy.
bachelor's degrees, no high school. Like what?
Okay, well that's a little bit harder to pull off, but it could happen.
Yeah,
So, they're honorary degrees.
yeah.
I barely made it through high school and I have 3 degrees, so at least I made it.
So if you have a bachelor's degree or some sort of education, maybe you're still in school or you started recently,
Mhm.
I think that should go on there. Now, the question is dates. And this gets back to what we talked about earlier in terms of you're giving away your age or you're giving people the ability to make a close approximation about your age. And I'm not saying don't do that. I'm saying that you should think about whether you want to give people that opportunity or not.
Be aware of that in case that's important to you. But
Yeah.
I have one that I'm curious if you thought about. Um, we're discussing things. You did bring up that someone has asked about if you're married.
Mm-hmm.
Do you suggest men, women, whoever take their wedding rings off before an interview?
Mm,
I mean, as a guy, this you can tell right here based on my jewelry that I'm married. I don't have.
yeah.
So, is that something that should be thought of and pop the ring off before you go in the office? Men or women,
I
because
mean,
that
That's
does
an
give
interesting.
away something that
you do what you got to do. I wouldn't if I again if I found out. I mean, I wouldn't even notice. I'll be honest. But let's pretend somehow I noticed you have a ring now or whatever.
I
Like
like
I
Dunce's
wouldn't
answer.
even take a second thought. I wouldn't care. So yeah, I don't know. But purposefully like camouflaging a fact, even if it's not important, feels icky to me. But I don't know. Like I wouldn't go out of my way to advertise something, but maybe that's because that's personal to me. Like, which sounds like the opposite, right? But like I just that feels icky. Like I wouldn't. I'm gonna meet you in person, and then I'm gonna. The fact I have to put a suit on is lying enough.
Right?
But I wouldn't care.
Right.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So I could totally understand, Grady, someone removing a wedding ring if they sense or have outright evidence that they've been discriminated against in some way because of their marital status. Um,
Yeah, it probably happened. If it happened to
Good.
them in the past and they feel like they need to do that now, again, I wish that didn't happen, but I'm
yeah,
sure it does. Kind of like the tattoo thing. Now I'm thinking about it. The tattoos thing.
I wear long
Sometimes you
sleeves
feel
at
like you need
interviews.
to wear. What's that?
I wear long sleeves at interviews.
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
And that's
so
because I know that it's it's a bias that's held by people based on usually previous experience with people. The
yeah,
experience that they have, from media and movies
all
and
stereotypes tend to be based on kind of
yeah,
that.
they see a guy that's
One guy was mean to me,
ex-military with
therefore,
tattoos. Yeah, they're like, nah. In
and your
reality, I'm
current
like,
employer is like, hell yeah, but yeah.
oh yeah, the current one. Actually, this current one, I did not wear long sleeve,
Yeah.
yeah,
and because I made that decision of if you want to hire me, hire me. Don't
right.
play these stupid games.
Yep.
But I was gonna say the other side of that ring thing.
Mhm.
Would you feel different? I know it's obviously we can't place ourselves in a female's shoes as easy as we would like to in a sentence, but if you're a female
Excuse me.
going in with a huge rock, you now also gave away your salary status or your family's income status. Gave away that you're married, and
Yeah.
Well,
kind
if
of
it's
your
like
age, depending on how
I'm gonna be
big
a
the
broken
ring
record.
is.
If it's for a senior position,
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just, a lot of this is just devil's advocate. I would never take my ring off before I go in just because I've never been discriminated in that way. But like you said, if someone has, maybe that's a good trick to, or like Dunn said, add more rings, which
Yeah,
camouflage it in.
and conversely, I'm thinking, and I guess this depends on where you're at in your career and how desperate you are for a job.
I'm
But like
thinking
right
entry
now,
level, honestly. Like now, yeah, nothing really matters.
right now, I wouldn't even consider taking my ring off because I'm like you can either hire me or not.
Can't.
There will be other places who will hire me.
Yeah, but I think
I
a common thread in this whole conversation is, we've already reached a level where we can do that. Not
Yeah.
everyone can.
That's true.
Some
Now,
people have to. Let's just, I know it's
mhm,
on the interwebs, and we might get some flames, but people have to hide parts of who they are. Unfortunately, it's
Yeah.
not right. In order to survive to get that interview, they might have to hide something that's very important to them. So I would not be upset if I found out. It would be nothing more than an interesting antidote. I said
Yeah.
that wrong. If
That's
I
true.
found out someone didn't wear the wedding ring in interviews, and then we hired them, like, okay, again, I probably wouldn't even notice. Or if you normally, prefer to have your pride all over you, your buttons or clothes or purses or whatever,
mhm,
but you can't do that. You hide that tattoo because people are going to be discriminating against you.
Yeah.
I get it. I would not
yeah.
be. I wouldn't have a problem if I found out that you were hiding something because it's your personal life, right?
Oh, I loved it
So
when we all worked together, and the first time that it got warm out, and when it was warm out, we always wore button ups and slacks at this job we all worked at. And when it got warm up, I always rolled my button up sleeves up. So the first time it got warm and I was there, I rolled them up. Everybody's like, "What?" It's like too late now.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I have just a few more points and we can wrap up. We're moving toward the bottom. We're pretty much at the very bottom. So we've talked about educational history. You might have a professional training or just training area where you've taken a specific class offered by some recognized school or company. So, for example, I have a class listed from SQLskills.com. Now, for people who work with databases, um, I'm just going to flat out say you should know that name. And if you don't, you should go put it into your browser and you'll be ready to learn for the next 10 years. And I'm not even kidding. So SQL Skills offers classes and courses, and I attended one of these courses in person, back in the before days, and
4 days.
got a little certification through, I think it's Credly or something. I put that on my resume, and it goes on my LinkedIn as well.
Yeah.
So, and I keep that separate. You could, I guess, put it under education. I just created a separate one so that people could see ongoing training as a section in my resume because I think that's important,
Yeah.
particularly in IT, but I can imagine in other environments that it would be as well. Like I'm thinking about real estate. Don't they have to? I have a couple of realtor friends, and I think they have to like re-up every so
Yeah.
many
yeah,
years or something. And so I
Hmm.
think a separate training section could be important to show additional courses that you've taken, that sort of thing.
Yeah. My brother is an electrician, and they do OSHA training, and they have like their OSHA 30, OSHA 80, whatever they are.
Hmm.
Um, but I found out he's like, yeah, we did the OSHA 80 or whatever it was, but the 80 meant how many hours it was in that class. I was like, oh
Okay.
man, oh hell no. But that kind of stuff uh definitely can go in that area as well, I would think, of
Yeah.
required training that you've
Yeah,
completed for the year, or up to date training. And um,
for sure.
company looks at it and is
Uh,
like, well, we can save some money because we don't have to send you that training now. Like, cool.
yeah, that's true.
Same with security clearances. A lot of companies look at security clearances as a $20,000 savings. It's like,
Yeah.
where would you put that?
Um, I would put it under a separate section that I was about to mention, which is called certifications. So
for that segue.
I would list a security clearance under a certification because it's a specialized stamp of approval.
Yeah, I can see that.
I mean, you could list it under, you know, training or education, I guess, but to me, it's a specialized thing. And so
Yeah.
I have a section for certifications. So I know not every industry has certifications, but certainly in the IT world, there are more certifications than there are people, it feels like sometimes.
I'd be
And
interested in if people from other industries in chat or on the Discord, if there are certs in the industries that they all currently work in.
oh yeah, that would be
Because obviously
interesting
I
to
know
know.
all my certs that I like. A group of my certs I can get. I know a group of certs you've gotten. Um,
Right.
I know of the ones like I said my brother has talked about electrician kind of certs, but I'm curious if you if you're a, let's go just generic, you're a checkout person at the local grocery store. Is there something that you can work on to get certified in your job? Maybe not as a clerk, but maybe as um, a management at your company. I'm sure Walmart, those kind of companies offer that kind of stuff. So, I just
Yeah.
am curious if there's other types of certs out there.
Yeah, I'd be curious about people in finance or in other areas, psychology, psychologists, that sort of thing. I mean, yeah, that'd be
Well, I
interesting.
guess I can say that my wife gets them, so I know they're
Yeah,
in barber and style hair things.
cosmetology.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
Nice with the words and the talking. Good job.
words talking.
Every once in a while, it all comes together for me. So so I have three things left, and these are more about just tips or ideas, and that is use a use a font size of like 10 to 12 points. That was something that was pretty common in the research that I found. I checked my resume and I'm doing good there, doing well with that. It just needs to be
Good.
something readable and not fancy. Like, please, dear Lord, don't do calligraphy font or, something
So
nonsensical.
if I'm doing word art for the title, obviously, just like the title of the what word art would you suggest from Microsoft Word? I can't. Okay, go ahead.
Me?
No, I would suggest just no.
Let's continue.
Um, some of the
Toby
articles
pops up.
mention,
See you trying not to get hired.
yeah. Some other thoughts around that is left aligning for easier skimming by whoever is going to read it. So we've talked about how people get, HR people or hiring managers get tons of resumes. They don't have time to read everything. They're looking for specific sections and specific skills. And if the words are like all over the place on the page, then your resume is going to get tossed in the trash or deleted from the Outlook.
Yeah,
Um,
we were given our HR came to us and asked for specific words, like because they don't know programming, so they're like, we need to know exact keywords. We're like Java, .NET. We gave them a list of keywords that we would like to see.
right.
So we didn't even see all the resumes that come in, unfortunately. Like I think Dunce was talking earlier. They go through this non-IT system first and filter down to what HR thinks we want to see. So keep that in mind.
Right. Yeah. And then the last thing, and we can have some wrapping thoughts and find someone to raid. This was a really interesting point that I hadn't really thought about, and I need to change for myself. Is a recommendation of making sure that the saved file name of your resume that you're sending out includes your name.
Yes.
I do know
And
that one.
so you guys are gonna, well, I don't know what your reaction will be. I use numbers, and I'm up to 20 or 21 versions of my resume.
I
And
mean, I
some
guess
of that,
yeah. It's I use dates. I do name and date. So I mean,
yeah, but
yeah.
I always just send that resume 19. That's what gets attached to the email. And I've never really thought about my name being in the file would be helpful.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a really, really good tip. I feel like I need to defend having so many resumes, so I'm going to do that now when we talk or when we're wrapping up.
On that
The
note, let's not
reasons
listen to Lee
there,
about having so many resumes while we find someone.
the reason is that over the years, as I dug into how to build a resume for myself, I developed different versions of the resume, and as I've source control for your resume, absolutely. Um, the resume has changed as I've gotten better at building them. I've known what to put on them, what to not put on them. And as the years have gone by, obviously I have more and more stuff to put on them. And the relevance of those jobs and the stuff changes.
Yeah.
And why am I getting a pull request on my resume? Um, and so that's why I have so many different versions. And the other reason is relevant to something that we talked about earlier. I think O'Grady brought this up is, you know, I've had so many jobs at this point over the years, even tech jobs, that there's only so much information. There's only so much information I can hold in my head. So if I
Yeah.
can store that information electronically, like when I worked for a certain place, and reference it when I need it with an old resume, then I can do that. So that's the other reason I have so many different versions. And there have been many times when I've gone back to reference the old resume for maybe skills or tasks as I'm thinking about resume 22.
hmm
Is there something I need to resurrect, or is there something I need to include now? Maybe looking at old tasks will cause me to remember something that I've done recently
Yep.
that's not on my resume. And so that's another reason I have so many different ones. So, you guys have any
That's fair.
last thoughts?
Only thing I would add is I actually don't think it's a problem that you have 21 resumes because
don't.
I've always had the
Yeah.
thought that you should basically, I mean, you don't have to start from an empty slate, but every interview you should kind of tailor to what they're asking. So,
Yeah.
I like to have the little cliff notes, the little bullet point list at the top, me personally, for those people who are like, skimming through the HR people,
Yeah.
whomever, to say,
Yeah.
oh, this person, they're looking for Docker, Kubernetes, this, that, that. I put that in the bullet point list up at the top, and then down below I explain, right? I interacted with it in this job.
hmm
I was the proof of concept. I was the one that introduced it to this company, right? Whatever that may be. But at the top, I put in the list. That way, if you're applying for a job that security clearance is important, I would mention that as well.
For sure.
To get that, and then in the chat I said 5 minutes. That you only have 5 minutes to get their attention. But let's be honest. There's times when you have like 10 seconds. They're gonna
Oh, yeah.
look, and they're like
Mhm.
looking because they are. But you're looking for somebody, so they're flipping through like trading cards, looking for the perfect fit. Um, and they're gonna grab a handful and sit over the hiring manager because my hiring manager can't look at 250 resumes, right? So if
Yeah.
you put something at the top, my opinion, put something at the top that can maybe get you in that short list in the 10 seconds someone's or clicking, let's be honest, it's 2022,
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
right? So
For sure.
that's me.
Yeah. I agree with that. It's not always like someone even reads past your summary. I mean, it's very possible someone picks up your resume, looks at the summary, and is like, nope, next. Just because of no reason at all, except I have 100 in front of me. You didn't wow me in that first sentence. I need to get to someone that does. Like,
Right. So
not saying that's the
lesson-
correct approach to it, but I'm saying that's how it happens a lot of times.
It's the reality, unfortunately, sometimes at least.
Mhm.
So last thing I'm going to mention is just, we talked about resume format. So if you were waiting for information about, but what goes in the resume, that's next week. And we'll talk about resume content, what words go on the page beyond what we've talked about in terms of formatting. How do I sell myself to somebody in the resume? That's next week.
Okay.
And the plan currently is we're going to talk through some of that, and I will show my resume. I will redact based on this very informative discussion, but not so my address, telephone number, personal information will not
Oh,
be
yeah.
there, but you're going to see everything else.
Yeah, I can. I was gonna pull up the one I made for my wife. My resume isn't stellar, but the one I made for her is. So I can redact some stuff on that and put it
Your
up as well.
priorities check out.
You know, it's just how it goes. All right. Well, I have a raid target, and he's actually
Do
playing
it.
a game that is a possibility that we could play for community night. It's called Pummel Party. I think Dunce has played it. I think I played it with Dunce, or he's seen me play it. But it's a fun game, kind of like a Mario Party type thing. And
Okay.
yeah,
Oh.
so I think we've raided Raced Island before, but why not? Make sure you go drop him that follow, as well as us if you have not already. If one of you don't mind dropping the Discords and Twitters
On it.
in the chat, I will go ahead and get this raid going. There we go. So, oh, did you write?
You did it right.
I still need to make that command that when you put Twitch, it's like.
You should totally do it because
Stop
I'll
it.
do it again.
All right. Well, signing off.